The Utah Jazz are once again off to a really good start this year. While they do not have the top of the conference dominance that they had last year due to the Warriors and Suns breaking out this year, they are still easily third with the distance between them and 4, and they are on pace to win 60 games. And they even have a better net rating than they had last year, and last year they were first in net rating, now they are second. So the Utah Jazz are really good again. They are a top 5 offense and defense again. In fact, I believe this year they are a top 3 offense and defense. And yet, outside of what I assume are a few joke tweets from Dom2K, I have not seen anybody take this Utah Jazz team even remotely seriously as a contender. And if you recall back to last season when they were the first seed and they were easily the best regular season team in the league, they got the same exact treatment. Nobody thought this team was legit. So why does no one believe in the Utah Jazz? Let's talk about it. Before I continue on with this video, about half of the people who watch these videos are not subscribed, so if you fall to that 50%... Before I continue on with this video, about half of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed, so if you fall to that 50%, then please subscribe. I am trying to hit 200,000 subscribers on this channel by the end of the year. We're about 7,000 away with about, 19 days left to go. So please do me that favor and subscribe so I can hit that goal. Also, drop a like on this video. It only takes 1 second and makes a massive difference. Also, one last thing. Most recent upload on this channel is yet another deep dive, meaning I've done 3 in 3 weeks. Look at me go. If you have not watched that one already, I would much appreciate it. It is talking about players who get the system player criticism. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go do so. The Jazz are a team that last season I actually spent a lot of time defending because everybody was calling this team essentially the 2015 Hawks of the Western Conference, and I didn't think that was a fair comparison. I made the argument that the fact that they had a guy capable of playing like a superstar, that player being Donovan Mitchell, was the difference between them and that Hawks team. However, then came the second round of the playoffs, and in spite of the fact that Kawhi Leonard got injured in Game 4, the Utah Jazz proceeded to lose the series, not only losing it, but losing the following 2 games by a decent margin. Again, Kawhi was not playing. This was Paul George and the Clippers, not Kawhi, Paul George and the Clippers, and they lost the last 2 games when things just went heavily in their favor. Now, as for why nobody really believed in this team, it's that most people, including myself, don't really believe that you can win a championship without a guy playing at a superstar level, but that's kind of where the Utah Jazz fall in a gray area because Donovan Mitchell is very unique in that aspect, because in the regular season, Donovan Mitchell is absolutely not a superstar level guy, but when he reaches the playoffs, he plays like a superstar level player, so it's kind of hard to define. He's in this very weird camp of regular season, not a superstar, playoffs, he absolutely is. For his career, his points per game go up by 5.3 a game in the playoffs, while also having a marginal improvement in his efficiency with his true shooting percentage going up 2%. The guy averages 29 points per game in the playoffs, last year averaged 35 points per game in the playoffs, and he just absolutely kills it in the postseason. So in that respect, I would actually say that, especially being what he did last year, I don't even know that not having a superstar caliber player is the reason why people wouldn't believe in the Utah Jazz, because Donovan Mitchell has played like that. So then we get to Rudy Gobert. Rudy is... Actually, I wrote Rudy is perhaps the biggest reason people don't believe in the Jazz. Scratch that. Rudy is the biggest reason people do not believe in the Utah Jazz. That's a bad wording in the script. It's absolutely Rudy Gobert. But if you were hoping for this video to be a Rudy Gobert slander hour, well, first of all, these videos are like 15 minutes max, but also, no. Not gonna do that, because I don't believe the problems with Rudy Gobert are necessarily his fault, and I'll explain why in an extremely convoluted way, so let's get into that. The problem with Rudy Gobert is not his flaws that we all know and love to clown on. It's rather that his flaws are made to be more exploitable than they otherwise would with different personnel on the Jazz roster. The construction of the Utah Jazz defense, the way that they play defense as a whole, is pretty much inherently designed to be exploited when the time comes. The flaws that Gobert has on the defensive end are no doubt exploitable, and sure, if he just completely dropped those, that would make a world of difference. However, that does not mean that he is just some useless player in the playoffs. His skill set is still valuable. However, the way that the Jazz play defense as a whole takes something that should be kind of exploitable with Rudy and makes it extremely exploitable. The Jazz have no true point of attack defenders. While they have some guys who are good-ish on that end, like Mike Conley, even though he's getting older, he's still good defensively, and then Royce O'Neal, who's a pretty good perimeter defender. Overall, their defense is just Rudy Gobert. Their perimeter defense is pretty whatever, but because their paint defense is on lock because of Rudy Gobert, they end up being a top-ranked defense every season. And the game plan has essentially been just that. Our perimeter defense will do a respectable enough job, but if they get by us, Rudy Gobert will meet them at the rim. Their whole defense is kind of designed to funnel people to the rim because they know Rudy Gobert is one of the best rim protectors of all time. And honestly, that game plan would have worked a few decades ago, but we are in the modern game where perimeter defense is arguably just as important as paint defense, and it's the biggest change in the game since those couple of decades ago. You cannot have a defensive scheme based around, we don't really care about the perimeter, we'll protect the paint. The Bucks did that before, and that was the most exploitable aspect of their defense in the past. And then they changed it, and now their defense isn't really exploitable. As long as Utah's perimeter defense is just getting by, it's going to make exploiting Rudy a lot easier when he's facing a really good team. How, might you ask? How does okay perimeter defense equal Rudy gets exploited? Well, here's the thing. While that might get you by in the regular season, and it will work against not so great teams, which is why the Jazz pretty much always win in the first round, the thing is, that's going to be exploited by good teams, especially in the playoffs. Those problems with the perimeter defense are going to be taken advantage of in the playoffs. We saw that exact thing happen with the Clippers. The Clippers were a good team, and thus they game planned for their defensive scheme. And consequently, because people kept blowing by their defenders in the Clippers series, Rudy is just the guy left to pick up the slack in an area defensively that he's just not good at. To put it as simply as possible, Utah's defensive scheme is designed to set Rudy Gobert up to fail. I realize it's weird to say that a team that's defense has been top 5 like multiple years in a row now needs to improve their defensive personnel, but the thing is, it is because that top 5 defense is just Rudy Gobert that makes it to where they just crash defensively in the playoffs. They're not even close to as good defensively in the playoffs. As a result, their regular season defense is fool's gold. It is, yeah, it looks good now, but rub on it a little bit, and it's not actually gold. It's fucking bullshit. You hear a lot that the Utah Jazz are a regular season team, and honestly, to me, you see that criticism on the surface level, and it seems a little bit lazy. That's especially what I thought when they were saying that last year, and then what do you know, I was proven wrong. There is truth in that statement. The Jazz have things about them that are exploitable, but not in a way that teams are going to really put all that much effort into exploiting in the regular season. There is a fundamental difference between how teams game plan in the playoffs and in the regular season. And when it comes to opposing teams' game plan in the regular season, the Utah Jazz have that shit locked down. Different story in the playoffs. For an example of how teams game plan different, let's take a look at the Clippers and Mavericks series from last year, the first round matchup before the Clippers played the Jazz. Because Luka Doncic kept killing Ivica Zubac on the switch, the result was the Clippers running small ball with Marcus Morris at center. To combat that, the Mavericks put Boban Marjanovic out there to kill them in the paint, and then to combat that, the Clippers ended up attacking Boban similarly to how Luka did with Zubac on the defensive end. But in the regular season, that shit's not happening. The Clippers are not going to start Marcus Morris at center just to avoid Luka killing them on the switch. They're not going to try and attack Boban because Boban's not even going to be on the fucking floor because Rick Carlisle's not going to put him out there in the regular season. Teams are going try-hard mode in the playoffs. Every little inch that they can get to make a difference in the game, they're going to reach for that inch. not a great phrase there. But the point is, they're going to go for it all. But come regular season, they're not going to try that hard to exploit you. And honestly, that's even more so the case with a good team, because a good team like the Los Angeles Clippers, as the example, they're knowing that they're going to be a top seed in the conference without really going for it that hard. They're a team that's going to coast and put their efforts in when the playoffs come around, and that's when you're going to see them try hard. Even more so than teams that are like on the fringe of making the playoffs, because then it makes sense for them to try harder because they need to make sure they make the playoffs. A team like the Clippers is going to coast in the regular season, so they're not really going to make a billion changes to the game plan just to make a couple point difference in a regular season game. But come playoff time, they will damn well start Marcus Morris at center to try and stop Luka Doncic. And ironically, they will also start Marcus Morris at center to pull Rudy Gobert out of the paint and essentially turn the Jazz defense into a sequence of watching players blow by their mediocre perimeter defense and Rudy either not help or help and then give an open shot to a guy in the corner. This is exactly what happened in Game 6 when Terrence Mann hit 7 three-pointers and the team as a whole hit 20 of them while shooting 51%. The Utah Jazz rely on Rudy Gobert as a one-man show defensively, and while he can absolutely be a one-man show in the paint, he cannot be a one-man show of an entire defense, and that results in them getting killed on the perimeter in the playoffs. The way the Jazz get killed is not because of their interior defense. That's always fucking good, but the Clippers shot 51% on 39 three-pointers in Game 6, and that was because the perimeter defense sucked, not Rudy Gobert. So long as Utah's defense is designed in the way that it is, Rudy Gobert is going to be targeted and the defense overall is going to suffer. When it comes to offense, the Jazz are no joke in the regular season, and they are even more no joke in the playoffs. Last year, the Jazz were third in offensive rating in the regular season and second in the playoffs. In fact, their offensive rating, which usually goes down for teams in the playoffs, went up by 4 points in the playoffs. Meanwhile, their defense was 4th in the regular season, but 12th out of 16 in the playoffs, with that rating going down by 14 goddamn points. The Utah Jazz are built to succeed in the regular season and fail in the playoffs, and until that ends up being changed, no one's going to believe in them. Shout out to Rudy for editing this video, but that is the end of this video. Please be sure to like and subscribe for more NBA content like this, and keep the outro music.